Hi folks, my name is Kevin Davis from the Canyon River Grill, and today I'm going to show you how to shuck an oyster. So first off, we're going to be shucking a Jaya species of oyster, which is a common oyster on the west coast. And to do that, I'm going to recommend that you use a short shank knife. This particular knife is called a Doublon, and it's my favorite oyster knife. It's a short shank. And what I mean by that is, this is a short shank and this is a long shank knife. This particular technique is actually relatively safe if you're using a short shank, but if you're going to use a long shank, I recommend that you open the oyster on a cutting board with a towel, wrapped in a towel. Otherwise, it can be very dangerous. So, get to the point. The point is the hinge, okay? And you want to find the hinge, which is the smallest point in the back where the oyster comes together, okay? And what you want to do is grip the oyster with your thumb falling over the top of the oyster to the right hand side. So this is where the adductor muscle is, and I'll show you why that's important in a second. But you're going to put it in the palm of your hand and you're going to let your thumb rest onto the top of the adductor muscle. Okay, now you hold the oyster up with your arms down and your forearms facing up, so that way you can use the core strength of your shoulders and your back. Okay, but the most important thing is that we're only going to go in 1/8 of an inch. It's just a small amount. All you need is that purchase to get the oyster knife seated into the hinge, and then you can make the cut. Okay, so you'll see when I raise it up like this, now I have all my strength together and I'm just going 1/8 of an inch. That's it. The oyster knife is in. When it's in 1/8 of an inch, you stop pushing. Okay, you're definitely not driving the oyster knife all the way through the oyster. Okay, now at that point, you can use your wrist. Okay, and it's just that little click. So if you heard the little click, that oyster shell is free. Now, okay, I'm going to hold it in the flat of my hand, and I'm going to put the heel of my palm up against the side of the shell. So when I open it up, I'm actually holding it open with the heel of my palm. Okay, so that way I can hold the oyster up at my eye level, and I can see the adductor muscle and make a perfect cut without chopping up the oyster. You see that? And that's a perfect oyster. Okay, now your next move is you take your oyster knife and you move it to 12 o'clock and you insert underneath the adductor muscle and make a clean cut. Okay, that way the oyster's free, and you want to just back it out of the shell to make sure it is free, because what you don't want is to leave it connected to the shell, because it's very frustrating when you go to pull a perfect oyster out of the shell and it's stuck to the shell and you rip it apart. Anyway, this is key to making the oyster look like, when it's shucked, that it was done by a professional. So, there's also another move if you want to make sure that your oyster is perfectly free, that's commonly used, or also if you slightly cut up the top of your oyster any and then you don't really like it for the presentation, you can take it and make a simple flip like that. And now you have another perfect side to work with. This is a Jamestown oyster, and it is supremely fresh. I don't know if you've heard of Jamestown oysters, but they're in Squim Bay, and their oysters are exquisite. You see the juice, the fresh juice in that shell, and once you know it's free like that, then you could just eat it right out of the shell like this. Oh man, that's a great oyster.